I'm joined with Tom Loeffler. Tom, how you doing tonight?
I'm great, John. Good to see you.
You as well, owner of 360 Boxing Promotions. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just now landed a deal with the UFC Fight Pass. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we have a multi-fight deal with UFC. We have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with Dana White. I've known him for a number of years. He said the only reason back then, the only reason he was watching boxing was because of Triple G. So I've known him since those days. And then last year, I flew up to Las Vegas and brought King Callum Walsh with me. And ever since that meeting, he loved the idea that I had and the vision of building boxing on Fight Pass. He really liked Callum Walsh. He got I think flashbacks of Conor McGregor and the Irish fans and all the success he had with Conor. And so we got 4 shows last year, and we got very high ratings for boxing on Fight Pass, and then that turned into more shows this year. So it's working out really well. The Hollywood Fight Nights is really a great platform to develop young fighters and world-class fighters. You see, Sergey Boachuk has fought on a number of the Fight Pass shows, and he's rated number 3 in the WBC. But it's perfect for guys like Callum Walsh, for Omar Trinidad. We just signed Kane Sandoval, who's 8-0. Umar Dambeka. I mean, we got a lot of great talent coming up, and the fans are going to be excited to watch them on Fight Pass.
I was going to say to start this interview, I was going to ask you how you doing, but man, you got to be doing great. You know, to land on that platform, which I think is the perfect time and the perfect place to get on UFC Fight Pass, which we're going to talk about more in a moment. But I was going to say, you're feeling good. You just signed 2 great fighters right there.
No, absolutely, Johnny. I feel really in a great position when you have someone like Dana White behind you. Dana came to the Boston show that we did. We went to a 4,000 seat Agganis Arena at Boston University, and Dana was there, and he did that great promotion where Callum broke the record at Peter Welsh's gym for that punch bag machine. And so then Dana posted on social media, anyone that comes down to that gym and can break Callum's record, he's going to give him $5,000. There were about 300 people down there. It was packed, and all of them tried to break it. Kevin McBride was there, the guy that beat Mike Tyson, a local Irish heavyweight there in Boston, and nobody could beat his record. So then Callum said, well, if no one beats my record, can I get the money? And so Dana gave him the money. And it was really good. It was a great week in Boston. It was a lot of work, definitely a lot of work. Production was a lot of work and expensive, but it turned out great. Everyone loved it on UFC Fight Pass. It got really good ratings. The fight fans now are realizing that UFC Fight Pass is another outlet to watch quality boxing. I mean, now we have a strategy and a vision of building these guys, and they're all familiar with Callum Walsh. They're familiar with Boachuk. They're familiar with Omar Trinidad. And the great thing that, one of the things I promised Dana, which he really likes about our shows, is we have a reputation for just putting on all action fights. The UFC fans are pretty set in their ways about being fans of the UFC, but if they're going to watch a boxing fight, they want it to be an exciting boxing fight. And Callum Walsh always delivers excitement. Boachuk's nonstop. So is Trinidad, and like I said, a lot of the guys that we've signed. So that was my commitment to Dana, and it's working. Like I said, we got a really high rating for boxing on that Boston show. It was the day before St. Patrick's Day. Callum had a very impressive knockout over Wesley Tucker, who was 15-4. He's never been stopped in 2 rounds like that before. And then after that, we had a lot of celebrities also. Dana brought Max Crosby, the all-pro linebacker from the Raiders. He brought him with him. Matt Serra was there with Dana. We had George St. Pierre was there, who was friends with Freddie Roach, who Freddie trained GSP, in the stand-up game. Mickey Ward was there. Jerry Cooney came up all the way from New York. The guys from Madison Square Garden, who I have a great relationship with because of all the success we had with Triple G at the Garden and the Klitschko brothers at the Garden. Mm-hmm. So they drove all the way to Boston to scout out Callum Walsh because Madison Square Garden would really love to have an outstanding Irish rising star. So it was a great night. A lot of work, but a great night all the way around.
I saw the card, and I'm so thankful that you brought up the production. The quality is fantastic. And that's why I think the platform of UFC Fight Pass is wonderful for the vibe that you guys are trying to do over at 360 with the Hollywood Fight Nights. I've been watching that since the crib, and that series is excellent. The vibe, the atmosphere, the commentating is great. I've heard some new phrases get coined, like such as load watch. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. We could go there in a moment, a little bit later. But you put some of the best in the biz. They got great personalities. The vibe is excellent. What's the vision that you have with the UFC Fight Pass? Obviously, signing great fighters.
Yeah.
Such as Walsh. I heard nothing but great things about him. Trained by Freddie Roach, mentioned.
Yes.
And very aggressive style.
Just to touch on Callum Walsh for a little bit, you mentioned he's trained by Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach, who also hails from Boston. So it really felt like a good promotion. I wanted to wait a year, but Dana wanted to go since he was going to be there in Boston. He wanted to go this year. And it's very unusual to take professional, a rising star who's 5-0, and to headline a big arena like that. Freddie has had a lot of success. I was wondering where I was going, but I remember Freddie has had a lot of success with Manny Pacquiao, who's a southpaw, big puncher. And I really see a lot of similarities to Freddie's training style for Callum Walsh. Very aggressive. Callum doesn't wait. Like with Triple G, he would always feel the guys out, maybe 1 or 2 rounds. Triple G is one of the biggest punchers in boxing history. The way he was able to deliver those one-punch knockouts, but Freddie is really training Callum aggressive. Callum's naturally aggressive, but with his amateur style, the European style, and Freddie's honing it into a very aggressive professional style. He doesn't wait. He jumps on people. If he can get someone out of there in the first or second round, he'll do it. And the great thing about Callum, it reminds me of the early Triple G days when I was just taking him everywhere, just cross-marketing him, cross-promoting him. And Callum's really become a household name because he's fought on UFC Fight Pass. He's become a household name with the UFC fans and all the promotion that Dana's done behind him. Dana got him a sponsorship with Howler Head Whiskey. And then the next day, we flew to London for UFC 286. So Callum just comes off of headlining the show. That was his 5th UFC Fight Pass show that he's headlined. We fly to London. We're there in the UK. We go to the UFC fan experience at the O2 Arena. That's where we promoted the fight with Triple G and Kell Brook, where he sold out. Triple G sold out that arena, and Callum broke the punch bag record for the UFC fan experience there at the O2 in London. So he holds the record over there too. And the UK fans, when we're going to the arena and walking into the arena and walking around the arena, they recognize Callum. So it's definitely working, the formula. And it was kind of a whirlwind, I'd say a 10-day trip between everything. And Callum's still in Ireland right now.
Yeah, you guys are riding high from that one. Like I said, I saw that card. We got another one coming up on the 14th, which I love. And the vision, again, going back to that, you got young fighters that are creating a buzz. And it's the perfect time because right now, boxing is looking big again. It's looking fresh. It's looking clean. It's taking pages from, the WWE more so. It looks more like a spectacle. It looks fresh. It looks nice. It's got a lot more energy in the seats, and it caters more to, I think, today's audience by doing so, by putting on more of a production show. And I think that's what you guys do great of, the vibe over there. You guys still rocking the DJs?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great DJ out there in Boston. We have a really good DJ here locally in LA. Oscar Vega puts on, ever since Hollywood Fight Nights got its name from, we started at the Avalon nightclub in Hollywood. And that was successful. It looked great. The production was great. It just, with the pandemic, it was too small of a place. It was too cramped. We were always selling it out. It had a balcony, but everything was full. And so with the pandemic, we went to Montebello, where they had a big outside patio. They had a bigger capacity. But we've packed Montebello now. We've reached the maximum capacity there at the Quiet Cannon. So now we moved to the Commerce Casino. So the April 14th show is actually going to be, for all the fans that are used to going to the Quiet Cannon, it's going to be at the Commerce Casino. It's Friday night, April 14th. We'll have great production there. It's a bigger capacity, and we're expecting a sold out crowd. We only have about 100 tickets left out of I think it holds about 1,400 people. So anyone that's interested in going there, it's 360promotions.us is the ticket link. You can follow us on the social media. You can find everything, but don't miss this main event: Omar Trinidad versus Adana Choa. Two local rivalries. Both guys, great records, and both guys have a great following. Both guys are selling a lot of tickets.
For
And
Trinidad, right? He's 9-0, 9 KOs.
right,
That's
he's
a
9
lot of
and 0.
wax. Yeah.
He's 9-0, and I think Adana Choa, off the top of my head, he's like
12
12
and
and
2.
2, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a great matchup. There's a lot of great matchups on that show. Actually, one of the features, we try to do as much cross promotion with the UFC fans as possible. As I mentioned, we want to build Callum not only in the boxing audience because he's a 6-time Irish national champion, European gold medalist, but we want to cross over and tap into that UFC fan base. And so it's really going well. And we're putting on Anderson Silva's son, Gabe Silva, will be making his professional boxing debut. Anderson Silva just got nominated or inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, and that's going to be a great treat for the audience as well.
This is, again, a wonderful thing for boxing, and I love the fact that, mixed martial arts fans, combat sports fans, boxing fans, all alike, we're all getting along. It's a great discipline, and we're all learning off each other. And I love it at the gym. I see it at Roy's gym out here when I used to work out over there. You have the cage, you have the boxing ring. Everyone's helping each other out in different sports, and that's what we want to see. It's about a discipline and the brotherhood, like we saw over the weekend. That was great. We saw, like, going into that Benavidez fight, with Caleb Plant, we saw those guys talking so much shit to each other. And then, oh my God, when Brian Campbell asked him at the press conference, when he asked Benavidez after Saturday night, is this over? He's like, fuck no, this ain't over. That's excitement. That gets people going. And it looked like an event. It looked like everyone that I know that doesn't even follow boxing hit me up, Johnny, this is a big deal, huh? Yeah. I'm like, yeah. They're like, just because you live in Vegas? I'm like, no, it's a big deal in the boxing world and the sports community. Yeah. You're going to see something wonderful in that fight. What was your thoughts on that fight?
No, it was nice to see. First of all, the unfortunate thing about boxing, and where boxing gets a bad reputation, is the best don't fight the best. You can't. It's like impossible to get two champions to fight each other, and that's what Dana does brilliantly in the UFC. It's because they're not focused on undefeated records. They'll have a great fight, and then if the loser puts in a great effort, he'll be right back, maybe 3 or 4 months later, 5 months later, and put him in another great fight. And that's what boxing really needs. And it was nice to see the fight with Benavidez and Caleb Plant. It was like you said, it was a great production. Mm-hmm. And it was exciting. It was a great fight. A lot of the other times, sometimes the fights don't live up to the billing, but this one was an exciting fight. It went back and forth, and it was a huge win for Benavidez on the big stage on pay-per-view. So we're happy to see him moving forward and growing his star. But that's what we're trying to develop, is those type of fights and fighters in the developmental stage, where then we can take them to the next level for sure.
Well, you've had a lot of success with that for sure. Look back to obviously the Klitschkos, and also Triple G, James Toney. I mean, you worked with some of the best of the best. So let's go there. How did it all start? What got you into your love affair of the boxing?
A good friend of mine from high school, Harlan Warner, was one of the pioneers in the sports memorabilia market. He was a genius, or is a genius, with sports memorabilia. And he had a lot of big name clients: Joe Namath, Sandy Koufax, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, basically a who's who of retired athletes. And the biggest name that he worked with was Muhammad Ali. And so I became partners with Harlan, and because we were doing a lot of work with Muhammad, a lot of active fighters wanted to work with us. And so the first fighter that we signed was Kevin Kelly, the Flushing Flash out of Flushing, Queens, New York. and we signed Kevin, and he was having some issues with his promoter at the time. He was the number one rated fighter, which I haven't seen recently, but number one across the board. Every sanctioning body had him number one because he had beaten everyone. He had beaten every rated top 10 fighter, but he couldn't get the world title fight. And so we had a good relationship with HBO as well. HBO naturally liked doing things with Ali, so we had a good relationship with them. We finally got actually, I have to say, Kevin got himself on HBO because he cornered Lou DiBello at Madison Square Garden. Kevin was a MSG fighter, and he would fight at the theater that was called the Felt Forum at the time. I remember being there in the cold New York weather, and he was the co-feature to Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt was the main event, and Buddy would come in with his big fur coat on, and Kevin fought on those shows. He had some great fights there, and so Kevin corners Lou in the bathroom and gives out like pencils with a flushing flash, and balloons, and all kinds of items that he produced. And so we got Kevin on HBO, and then he won against a really tough guy, Goyo Vargas, won the WBC featherweight championship on HBO in Reno, Nevada. And the great thing about Kevin was he would be the co-feature. So the main event would be heavyweights, whether it was Lennox Lewis or Michael Moore or whoever was a champion at the time. Kevin would be the co-feature to those heavyweight main events. And the great thing about that was Kevin was always in such an entertaining, exciting featherweight fight, nonstop punches. And then you would have these heavyweights that would come in and they'd be kind of lumbering and not a lot of punches and not as exciting. And everyone would say, we want to see Kevin Kelly back on the show. And that's how we got Kevin, multiple times.
Great personality, colorful personality, big time.
Yeah, so that's how I started in boxing, managing fighters. We also signed Oba Carr from Detroit out of the famed Kronk gym. Oba was probably the best that I had best welterweight that never won a world title. He could beat everyone except for the 4 champions at the time, or 3 champions at the time. Was Oscar De La Hoya. He lost to Felix Trinidad. He lost to Ike Corte, but he beat everybody else. So, Oba was a tremendous talent out of Detroit, Michigan. They called him the Motor City Car. Then we had a good relationship with Shane Mosley. I was working with Shane. I got Shane. Nobody wanted to fight Shane on the West Coast here. Shane was a great amateur. He was just tearing people up in the gym. He had gym wars with Gennaro Chicanita Hernandez, may rest in peace, but those were some gym wars with Shane. And we actually there's a funny story with Shane. We brought Shane to New York to get him some publicity because nobody knew him in New York. So we brought him, I think it was a fight. Actually, it was a fight at Madison Square Garden. And because Kevin fought with the Garden, we had a great relationship with them. So we brought Shane. We were going to bring him to the fight. And I remember Jack Mosley said, whatever you do, don't let him spar without me being there, because we only brought Shane out there. And sure enough, Kevin takes Shane down to Gleason's gym. And there is this really tough 135-pounder down there at Gleason's. And we were down there, and they're like, what weight does he fight in? He's like, lightweight. Do you want to do some sparring? And sure enough, Shane got in there, borrowed some headgear and some cup and his gloves, and just tore this guy up. And everyone's like, who's that? And that was the first time anyone on the East Coast saw who Shane was. And, then we got him that world title fight on HBO against Philip Holiday. We did a deal with Cedric Kushner. Like I said, nobody wanted to fight Shane, and he wasn't going to get anywhere close to a title fight. But we had a good relationship with Cedric at the time. He gave him the shot. It was on HBO. It was actually the very first fight at Mohegan Sun. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but Shane Mosley was the very first fight. It was on the same show as David Tua, I believe, was on the same show back then. And so Shane won the title on HBO. I remember Lou at that time, he wasn't that impressive because he had some stomach virus. And he said, okay, go get him another win on a different network. We got him a fight on USA Network. Looked good. Got him back on HBO. And then Shane looked like the normal Shane. And then went on, that tremendous tear that he went on at lightweight. I didn't think anyone could beat him at 135 pounds at that time. And then he moved up straight from 135 to 147.
Yeah.
Proceeded to beat Oscar at the Staples Center here in LA. So We have some great memories with Shane. I did like 4 fights with James Toney on the management side or advisor side, whatever you want to call at that time. Carlos Navarro was a tremendous amateur out of Los Angeles. His brother Jose was an Olympian, so I worked with Carlos, and then we worked with Ed Mahone, who was an undefeated fighter from the Forum Boxing, heavyweight, very heavy-handed guy. He was called Ed the Hammer Mahone, and so I took Ed over to fight Vitaly Klitschko in 1999 in Germany. This was right after Vitaly first won the world title. He won the WBO world title against Herbie Hyde in London, and he was a big underdog. No one really knew who the Klitschko brothers were at the time. They were naturally big Ukrainian guys. Vladimir was Olympic gold medalist, so people knew Vladimir. They always thought Vladimir was the better of the two. So anyway, Vitaly was a big underdog, goes in there, fights Herbie Hyde and knocked him out, I think in 2 rounds, just knocked him like across the ring, knocked him out, and wins the WBO title. Ed Mahone was rated, I believe he was #1 in WBO because he was an NABO champion. So I got him the title fight against Vitaly. So Vitaly winds up stopping Ed in the 3rd round in Germany. Ed had some back issues and things like that. But either way, Vitaly was just on a whole different level, which we saw. So I knew his manager / publicist at the time. I knew him well. He did a lot of commentary for the German TV when Kevin Kelly fought on the East Coast. And so he introduced me to Vitaly after the fight and said that I do a lot of work with Ali. And I told Vitaly, I said, you're welcome anytime to come to Los Angeles. If you want to meet Muhammad, I always try to be cordial, whether it was opponents for Triple G or the Klitschkos or whoever it was. I always try to be cordial to the opponents because I'd want to treat them with respect. If I had the champion, I want to treat the challengers with respect because if I had the challenger, I wanted to be treated the same way with respect. And so I was happy to talk to Vitaly. They seemed like great guys, him and Vladimir. And, you go from being foes to then, I said, if you want to come to Los Angeles, meet Ali, you're welcome to come over. And sure enough, about like maybe 4 months later, he flew to Los Angeles. We set up a meeting with Ali at the office. That went great. Naturally, it's their idol. So we took photos with Vitaly, and then we just kind of stayed in touch. Actually, he had a child over here at Cedar Sinai in Los Angeles, so he was over here for a longer period of time. I think about 3 months. So I would meet with him on a regular basis, and then just kind of he would ask me questions about his career. And he wasn't so happy with his promoter in Germany at the time, or as it kind of progressed. And so then it was like that was '99, and after 2000, we started becoming close friends. And then by the time 2003 came along, I said, Vitaly, if you want to start your own promotional company, the arenas will talk to you directly, the TV companies will talk to you directly. You don't really need a promoter if you're not happy with them. And the contract was coming up, and so sure enough, I started K2 Promotions with him. And the very first fight, so he fought Lennox Lewis in 2003. If that was one of the most memorable heavyweight championships I've ever seen.
Probably one of the greatest next to Lyle and Foreman, I think.
It was tremendous.
It was hardcore brutality.
Yeah. 2 big guys, 2 big punching guys. Emmanuel Stewart was in Lennox's corner. Fritz Stunek was in Vitaly's corner. Two top trainers that I know or that I knew. Unfortunately, both of them have passed away since then. But so Vitaly was a big underdog coming in with Lennox Lewis. Lennox naturally was a long-time reigning heavyweight champion, and he comes into Staples Center. That was actually, going back a little bit on that, Vitaly was the co-feature on that show. Lennox Lewis was going to be the main event. Vitaly was the mandatory for Lennox, and Lennox was avoiding fighting him. He got a couple of exceptions from the WBC, and we finally kind of cornered him to where they said, okay, Lennox, you can fight. I think it was Kirk Johnson at the time. You can fight Kirk Johnson, but then after that, your next title defense has to be against Vitaly Klitschko. So fine. So then we they go to announce the fight. It was going to be Lennox Lewis against Kirk Johnson, and then it was going to be Mike Tyson, who wasn't the champion anymore, as the co-feature, because Tyson was going to sell the tickets, and then Lennox was the champion. That's how the show was structured at Staples Center. Then we go to I remember going with Vladimir and Vitaly and their attorney to the press conference for Tyson and Lennox Lewis, who were fighting two different people. And I remember Steve Kim sees me pulling up into the parking lot, and he comes over to the car because I had Vitaly and Vladimir in the car, and he comes over. He said, "Tom, Tyson's not fighting on the show. He didn't show up. He's not fighting on the show. He's not happy." He's like, "You should try to get Vitaly on the show." So all of a sudden, it's like a light bulb goes on. We were disappointed, not being on the show in the first place, but more disappointed that Lennox didn't fight Vitaly. So then we go in there, and we're in the media section for the press conference. We listen to Lennox, and then naturally the media is interested in asking questions to the brothers. And I remember Gary Shaw was promoting that fight, and one of the German TV companies who was there covering Lennox asked Gary, "Can you put Vitaly on the show? Does it make sense?" He's like, "No way. There's no way we're going to put Vitaly and Klitschko on the show." And because we had a good relationship through Ali and through Ali's attorney, Ron DiNicola, who had known the CEO of AEG, Anschutz Entertainment Group, who owns the Staples Center. So through him, we got Gary Shaw to put Vitaly as the co-feature. It's kind of a long story, but it's an interesting story.
I remember it. It was so good.
So what happened then was Lennox was still going to fight Kirk Johnson, and Vitaly was fighting somebody else as the co-feature, and then Kirk Johnson hurt his back, and so HBO, that was going to be a pay-per-view, and then HBO, it was like 2 weeks before, and HBO was like, "Well, Lennox, if you want to save the show, you got to fight Vitaly, because that's the only fight that makes sense. It doesn't make sense putting someone else in as the last-minute notice." And the WBC, because Lennox couldn't fight Kirk Johnson, the WBC had to uphold their ruling that the next opponent that Lennox Lewis fought was Vitaly Klitschko. So we had him kind of box him in the corner as a chess match. And so Vitaly agreed right away. HBO's like, "If we're going to save this show, it's in a big arena. You got to make up your mind right away, because we're going to switch from pay-per-view to HBO." And Vitaly agreed right away. I think it took Lennox maybe 1 or 2 days. Then he agreed, and both guys agreed on short notice to fight each other, even though they were both training. And that turned out to be, on regular HBO, one of the greatest heavyweight fights that I've seen. And going into the ring, everyone was rooting for Lennox Lewis. I'd say it'd be like 80% to 20% rooting for Lennox. And by the time the fight was over and Vitaly showed all that heart, wanting to fight through the blood, and every time
screaming, no.
Yeah, he wanted to fight. And Joe Souza, I got to give him credit. After every round, he was able to stop the bleeding. It was terrible cuts, but they were superficial. He was able to stop the bleeding, and then
well, do you remember when they coagulated and another one popped? Like the blood had like no place to go, and when the other one started opening, there was an uppercut that was really nasty in there. Lennox hit Klitschko with, but Klitschko hit Lennox with some serious fireworks, some serious bombs in the second and third round of that fight.
Yeah, just to refresh everyone's memory, going into the 6th round, Vitaly was up on the scorecards, all scorecards, 4 rounds to 2.
Yes, sir.
So it was very competitive, a lot of big punches, but Vitaly was definitely winning that fight. And like you said, in that 6th round, Lennox hit him with the best uppercut he could have thrown. Jeez. And pretty much lifted Vitaly off his feet. And Lennox looked at him, and then Vitaly took a step back, and then he went straight forward. And it's like, you couldn't hurt Vitaly. Vitaly must have been the best chin I've ever seen. Any of the guys that Triple G naturally has a great gym too.
Unbelievable chin and will and determination. And I remember going into that round, the 6th round you're talking about, after you could tell Lennox was fatigued. When he was very fatigued. He sat down heavy. You felt all that weight. You felt all this 240 pounds.
anyone that says Lennox Lewis would have won that fight, if they would have let it go one more round, if you look at Lennox's body language, I like Lennox. I'm friendly.
Boom.
I'm friendly with
He
Lennox.
was lights
I
out.
love Emmanuel and I get along with Lennox fine. But if you look at his body language, he basically collapsed in the chair.
Yeah.
Mentally, I think mentally Lennox was broken. He hit him with his best punch and he couldn't hurt him. And he was fatigued. And then he had to go. It was only the 6th round. And then the doctor, it's interesting because that uppercut, the doctor was called in. The referee, Lou Moret, told me after the fight, he called the doctor in to look at the tongue because the uppercut cut the tongue and the lip, and there was blood now coming out of the mouth. Joe Souza had the blood under control, the bleeding under control, and then the doctor unfortunately stopped the fight. I mean, it was a bad cut on the eye, but he unfortunately stopped the fight because of the eye when the doctor called him in because of the tongue. And then it took, I remember, 63 stitches to stitch Vitaly. I got to give Dr. Pullman Hicks a lot of credit. Hicks to Dr. Hicks afterwards, and he said the cuts weren't around the nerve, the ocular nerve. That's where you got to be careful if you're in risk of damaging the eye. It looked really bad. Like I said, you can't blame the doctor for stopping it, but it looked really bad. But because the bleeding was able to be under control, usually that's the rule. If you can stop the bleeding, if you have no control of the cut and it's bleeding when it comes out of the corner, then it's like out of control. But Joe was able to stop the bleeding as bad as it was, and naturally when Lennox hit him, it would start bleeding again the next round. But the doctor had 63 stitches. He said it wasn't near any of the nerves. It looked bad. It was bleeding a lot. But
it looked bad. I didn't know it wasn't near nerves.
And you don't really know it when he was actually operating on, well, not operating, but stitching it up. He actually did it in the arena, and I gotta say he did a great job. You don't even see, as bad as those cuts looked, they were more superficial, and you don't even see a scar. He did such a great job as a plastic surgeon that you don't even see any scars. So
you don't even see anything at all.
No, you don't see it. And so the point about talking about that fight for so long is that we started K2 Promotions in 2003. We didn't promote that fight. That was a Gary Shaw fight, like I mentioned. But the next year, when Lennox vacated the title, he didn't want it to rematch. He knew he had enough of Vitaly, and the WBC ordered the rematch because of the controversial ending. Then Vitaly fought Corey Sanders. He's also unfortunately no longer with us. Rest in peace. Corey Sanders from South Africa fought for the vacant title. Big puncher, and it was like the brothers' revenge. Remember, Corey had stopped Vladimir like in the 2nd round in Germany, and so Vitaly fought Corey for the vacant title, brothers' revenge in Los Angeles. So if you can imagine, Johnny, my first promotion as a boxing promoter instead of a manager, boxing promoter, was WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Staples Center, one of the biggest and newest arenas at that time, Staples Center on HBO. It was international TV, German TV, all all the countries you can imagine, and that was my very first promotion. I didn't sleep for probably 6 weeks leading up to that fight.
Oh, I can only imagine, man.
But yeah, that was the beginning of K2 Promotions, and because we did such a great job, the California Commission was happy, WBC was happy, HBO was happy with the organization, with the publicity, with everything that went on. So I wound up promoting every Klitschko fight after that. They owned the company. I was the managing director of K2, so I promoted every Klitschko fight after that, and we hold the record at K2 Promotions for the most heavyweight championships this century. Since the year 2000, we promoted the most heavyweight championships, and I got to give Alexander Krasniuk a lot of credit. He started after we started Ukraine K2 Promotions here in the United States. He started K2 Ukraine and was doing shows there in Ukraine with Ukrainian TV and Ukrainian sponsors. Naturally, a much smaller budget than the heavyweight championships that we were promoting. But Alexander Krasniuk signed Alexander Usyk, gold medalist out of the London Olympics, and Usyk is carrying on that tradition now for K2 Promotions. It's K2 Ukraine, but so carrying on the legacy of heavyweight championship. So every time Usyk fights, it adds one more. You know what? Alexander Usyk to me is one of the most impressive guys that I've seen. First of all, he wins the gold medal in the Olympics. Secondly, he unifies all all the titles at cruiserweight. That's one thing we could never do with Triple G. If anyone could do it, I thought Triple G could do it because he really wanted. Some guys are like, okay, I'm champion, that's fine. I don't want to fight these other guys. He really wanted to fight all the other champions, and it was so hard to get a champion to fight him. It came down to he unified all the belts except for the WBO title, and that was Billy Joe Saunders, who was making money in the UK just fighting regular guys. And so whatever offer we offered him, he wouldn't accept, and that was unfortunate. But to get to the point is Alexander Usyk had that great opportunity in that World Boxing Super Series where all the champions had to fight each other, and he became undisputed cruiserweight, and then he goes, and a lot of guys that move up in weight, they fight an older guy, an older champion that they know they can beat, and so Usyk moves up, fights an Anthony Joshua in his prime, who's towering over him, and beats him 2 times. And so I really got to put Usyk as, one of the top, if not the top pound for pound guy, because you can't tell me every time he stepped in the ring,
Absolutely.
he's accomplished something great. There's some other pound for pound guys for sure, but Usyk would get my vote because he's just done it. He's done it all, in my opinion.
Absolutely. All right. So the rise of K2 Promotions, amazing.
Yeah.
And we went on to Triple G doing his thing, of course.
Yeah. Then, we did all the Klitschko fights since the first one in 2004. And then in 2011, we brought in Triple G to fight. This is a really bizarre story. A lot of people don't realize this, but we brought in Triple G to fight on one of Vladimir's big stadium fights over there, 50,000 people in Dusseldorf, Germany. And Vladimir was going to defend his world heavyweight championship, and Triple G was he was the WBA I don't know, interim champion or regular champion. That was when he was chasing Felix Sturm, and that was one of the toughest. He chased Felix for like 2 years as the mandatory. You talk about mandatory not getting a shot. He was just chasing him, and they didn't want to give him the shot because they knew what would happen. So anyway, we put him on the show as the co-feature, and then Vladimir. I was in the training camp in Austria. In fact, I'm flying there. I'm flying to the Stangelwort, Austria, the Austrian hotel, which is known as the Klitschko Hotel, the Klitschko training camp there in the Austrian Alps. They're doing a show on Monday, but so I was there. We went to the town in Germany where the fight was going to be at, and then on Vladimir was having really sharp pains. I think it was the last day of training camp or on the way over. And so on that Sunday, actually on that Monday, he had the Monday morning of fight week, he had to cancel the fight. And so we had a press conference. Vladimir couldn't fight. He had really sharp kidney stones, had to have a medical procedure done to remove them. And so Triple G went from fighting in front of 50,000 people in a German soccer stadium to literally a 500-person ballroom at the host hotel that we had, like downstairs in the basement in their meeting room area, because no one really knew. He wasn't really being promoted from his German promoter, and no one really knew who he was because he wasn't really on TV leading up to that. So yeah, it was 500 people in front of this in this ballroom, basically, in a German hotel in Dusseldorf. So then after that win, he fought Luan Simon, which Gennadi's power was very, people seem to try to criticize his opponents, but he could only fight the guys that were willing to get in the ring with them. So you take Luan Simon as an example. Luan Simon, tough veteran, Philadelphia fighter, gritty fighter, flew. He was over in Russia to fight. I think he fought Pirog. Fought one of the guys. Arthur Abraham. He fought a number of those guys, and never wasn't stopped. And then Triple G went out there. I think he was trying to impress us with all the Klitschko stuff, and wound up throwing this left hook, perfect, like outstretched hook, right hand, and wound up knocking him out in the first round, just like devastation. So that was like sent notice to like everyone, like this is a solid American veteran that's fought world-class, world champion fighters, and Triple G starched him in the first round. So then after that, that was like I think it was like around October, November, something like that, towards the end of the year. Then we wound up signing Gennady to a promotional contract, and that took a little while. I remember we signed it like the beginning of January, beginning of the year. So then I set up meetings with HBO, all the American TV companies. I set up meetings with HBO, Showtime, Epix was doing fights at the time in boxing. And I had the same pitch. I met with Steven Espinoza. I met at Showtime. I met with Kerry Davis and Peter Nelson and Mark Taffet at HBO and the guys over at Epix. And my pitch was the same thing. It was like, here's the guy from Kazakhstan. You know, they could tell his English wasn't very good at the time. He didn't speak much, and needed a Russian translator. His manager was there at the time who would translate for him. Abel Sanchez was there. And I basically told everyone, I said, you know, we know him as Triple G, but not everyone, you know, that name didn't really grow in the beginning. So I said, you know, Gennady, the people didn't even know, the HBO people, the guys, they didn't even know how to say his name. They didn't know how to say Golovkin. Gennady was new for him. They didn't know, most of them didn't know where Kazakhstan was as far as the fans, not the TV executives, but the fans. And so the pitch was, here's a guy from Kazakhstan. At that time, he was the WBA regular champion. They elevated Sturm to super champion, and Gennady was a regular champion. So here's a world champion. He'll fight anyone 165 pounds or 160 pounds that you want to put in there. He doesn't need a lot of money. He just needs a shot on American television. And, you know, it looked like, okay, so then HBO said, yeah, this sounds interesting, but they couldn't come up with a date. And then Steven at Showtime was going to give us a date in April. This was in January. So in April, he was going to give us a date. And then for one reason or another, that didn't work out. And then so we flew, I think we flew to Ukraine to keep him busy. Flew over to Ukraine, basically. He fought for nothing. He fought for the sponsorship money that he got from Kazakhstan, and paid for his opponent, and paid for all the expenses. But he made a world title defense of his WBA title. Then we finally got, what happened was we had him boxed in too. We had Felix Sturm boxed in also from the WBA. We finally got some traction after we got involved that Sturm was allowed one more title defense, which was basically, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6, probably 6, maybe even more than that, defenses that since Triple G was a mandatory. It was something unheard of, something crazy. And they finally said, okay, he can make one more title defense, and then the next fight he has to fight him. And then the next fight came around. We thought, okay, we're gonna get the fight. Then you know what Sturm did? The only exception that he could have gotten was he'd have to fight Triple G or fight a unification fight, which they figured a unification, 2 champions fighting each other, was bigger than the mandatory. So what Felix Sturm did was Dmitry Pirog was going to fight Daniel Giel. That was going to be a show where Kerry kind of promised, okay, you'll get one of the 2 slots on that show, either the main event or the co-feature, just depending on who it's going to be. And then winds up, both slots were filled. It wasn't our date. It was another. It was like Artie Pelulu / it was like an Artie Pelulu date. So again, my pitch was he'll fight anyone. So then what Sturm does is he gets Daniel Giel. He offers more money. I remember the numbers. I think Giel was getting $400,000 on HBO. Sturm offered him $600,000 to come to Germany with his IBF title at the time. So he got out. He got one more one more exception from the WBA because he got a champion to fight him. It was a unification fight. So that leaves Dmitry Pirog without an opponent. Who Dmitry Pirog was considered a killer at the time because he knocked out Danny Jacobs, if you remember. Big puncher, knocked out Danny Jacobs, I think even like in the second round, something crazy like.
It was early in that fight, yeah.
Nobody wanted to fight him, and that was another reason why Deal went to fight. He figured, he'll go fight the boxer Sturm in Germany instead of fighting the Russian knockout artist in Pirog. So then Gennady, Abel, the managers are like, yeah, no problem. They'll fight Dmitry Pirog. So then you're training for Dmitry Pirog, a big right-handed puncher.
Yeah.
It'd be a great unification fight. He had the WBO title. That would have given Triple G that WBO championship that was so elusive after that. It would have unified the WBA and the WBO titles. And then Pirog, then we get, I think it was like 3 weeks before, maybe even 2 weeks before, we get notice, okay, Pirog's training, but he hurt his back. Somehow he slipped and fell when he was running, hurt his back, can't fight. Now, and so I got to give a lot of credit to Peter Nelson, who saved the date for us because Artie wanted to naturally scrap it. If Pirog wasn't fighting, he wanted to scrap the whole fight and put someone else in because he had the HBO date. And Peter Nelson stood up and said, you know what? We made the commitment to Gennady. He's a champion. He'll still stay there, but you got to, find someone else for him. So then Artie got the completely opposite style. They said the money went down. Artie tried to do everything to discourage us from taking that fight. So he got, I remember he got the Polish, it was a European champion from Poland, who was very good at the time. He just beat Sebastian Zibik in Germany, beat him. And southpaw, totally different style, boxer, southpaw, as opposed to the big right-handed puncher. So he got a totally different style. He lowered the money, and he was just hoping that we would say no, or that Gennady would say no, this doesn't make sense for him. But Abel was on board, Gennady was on board. I said, look, let's just get this lot on HBO. It doesn't matter what the conditions are. My philosophy is get your foot in the door, and it worked. He wound up having a tremendously impressive performance on HBO. He stopped him. I think it was like in the 7th round, or maybe even the 5th round. But anyway, the fans loved it. HBO got this huge reaction. When can we see Triple G back in the ring? So then that was September. Remember, that was September 2012. So then I think he took one more fight after that to stay busy. And then it came around in January. I remember January, HBO was giving a date to Top Rank for Puerto Rico, and we were pressing them for a date. And so they said, you know what? And we wanted to go to Madison Square Garden. I had a great relationship with Madison Square Garden for the Klitschkos. I knew the magic of going there, the media capital of the world. In the middle of Manhattan, so many people surrounding the garden. And if you have a successful show there, it's nothing better than fighting at Madison Square Garden. So anyway, I was insisting on fighting at Madison Square Garden. They wanted him to fight there. I even told HBO, I told Kerry, if he doesn't get the date, then we'll just fight on Epics at Madison Square Garden. So then he did like a blend of Top Rank date from Puerto Rico. I think something happened with the Puerto Rican fighter. So they brought their date to Madison Square Garden. Triple G naturally should have been the main event. They had Mikey Garcia on from California. I like Mikey. I get along with him. I get along with Robert Garcia, but there's no way Mikey should have been the main event. And maybe if the fight was here in LA, but not in New York. So Triple G sold most of the tickets for that show because we did the promotion around him. A lot of Russian-speaking fans came to see him fight.
He's a good boy.
Naturally, the impressive performance on HBO in the September fight. So I remember so then we got Gabe Rosado, who was the #1 rated guy at the time. He was actually rated at junior middleweight because we couldn't get any of the top guys. Any of the top 10 guys in middleweight weren't going to fight him, or at least not fight him at a reasonable amount, which was the HBO budget at the time. They weren't paying very much, which again was the case. I said, he doesn't need a lot of money. He just needs to, be active and fight on TV. So we made the deal with Gabe Rosado. He comes in. Gabe's tough as nails. Naturally, get some criticism of why are you bringing a 154-pounder up to 160, but he was the #1 rated guy. And he knew he wasn't getting the title fight at 154 for a long time. He was getting more money to fight Triple G than he would have gotten to fight the 154-pound champion. And then now Gabe fights at like 175 and no one says anything about it, or 168, no one says anything. But when he came up to 160, all of a sudden everyone was criticizing the fact that he moved up in weight. But so then we had to make the concession. Triple G wasn't the main event. Mikey Garcia was the main event. I even forgot who Mikey fought. And there was like one other fight before Triple G. But the funny part was HBO said this only happened twice in their history, where the co-feature got a higher rating than the main event. So people tuned in to see Triple G.
And then they went out.
And then they tuned out because I remember Mark Taffet told me, it's like, this is only the second time we've seen it happen, where the co-feature got the higher rating, and the fans in Madison Square Garden, it was in the theater, the smaller arena there, 5,000-seat arena. That's when HBO knew they had a star in their hands. When the people specifically tuned in for the co-feature, they're like, Triple G is driving viewers to HBO and to watch him fight. So then we got our own date. Finally, we got our own date. I started Triple G Promotions with Gennady and his manager at the time, and so then I started promoting all the Triple G fights from then on. And really, I think we took people by surprise. They were American stars who really, I'm telling you, they got emotionally upset. American gold medalist, like I remember Danny Garcia from Philadelphia. His father Angel was going on about, I don't know why HBO is supporting this guy from Kazakhstan. They should be supporting American fighters. And Triple G was selling the tickets and getting the ratings. I remember after the Rosado fight, then he flew to Monaco. Again, not a big payday, but he flew to Monte Carlo because we couldn't get another date from HBO for a while. Went over there and knocked out Ishida. I remember Ishida, the tall Japanese guy that went 12 rounds with Pirog in Russia, and Triple G knocked him out of the ropes. I mean, those are just comparisons of where his punching power was at the time. And so then we wound up getting our own date at Madison Square Garden at the theater against Curtis Stevens. And remember, Curtis Stevens was the local guy from New York, kind of rough street guy. And a lot of people said, okay, you beat Rosado, you beat that other, I don't know why I'm forgetting the Polish guy's name, but he was a European champion the first fight. But they're like, okay, now you're fighting a guy from New York, rough, great pedigree, a lot of top fights. And Curtis Stevens going to be the one to expose Triple G. And Triple G goes out there. I remember second round, drops Stevens. Curtis, they kind of crossed the line because then they did, for the promotion, it's fine. But I remember, Gennady is a twin. So his twin brother, Max, took big offense where, it's one thing about promoting the fight, just like you were alluding to with the Benavidez, Caleb Plant fight. There was a lot of going back and forth, a lot of jostling, a lot of trash talking. That's one thing. But they felt Stevens crossed the line where he was posting some stuff where there was like coffins. There was a coffin. He was like digging a hole. Like, this is going to be you after the fight. When you start implying someone's going to die in the ring, that's where Max Goffin got really pissed off. And it became personal. So I remember he dropped Curtis Stevens in the second round. There was that famous photo of Stevens, like with his eyes open, his mouth open. It's like, holy smokes, what did I get hit with? I got hit with a ton of bricks. So he dropped in the second round. I'm pretty sure Triple G could have probably stopped him like 1 or 2 rounds after that. But he dragged it out, kept punishing him until like 8 rounds, until finally the corner or the referee stopped the fight. But I remember that was like one of those fights where could have gone for the knockout, and he just kept beating this guy up. And but that was, after he beat Stevens, then I think I don't remember the exact order. Then I think we fought Matthew Macklin, who was another top-rated guy. No one wanted to fight Matthew Macklin because, at least not voluntarily, because he dropped Sergio Martinez. Remember, Sergio wouldn't fight Triple G. Lou wanted nothing to do with Gennady when it came to Sergio Martinez, who Sergio at the time was considered the number one middleweight at the time. It was Sergio Martinez, it was Felix Sturm. None of them wanted to fight Triple G. So he fought the guy that gave Sergio all kinds of problems. Macklin dropped Martinez at the Garden and at that theater, gave him a hard time, and we wound up fighting him at Foxwoods. And the deal I had to make with Lou, this shows you the extraordinary lengths I had to go to get opponents to fight Triple G. I remember Matthew Macklin got paid the exact same amount as a challenger that Triple G got from the HBO money, and I had to give Lou. It was our promotion, it was our show. I had to give Lou the other 2 slots on the show, which I didn't really care about because we were focused on building Triple G. So just to get him to fight just to get Matthew Macklin and Lou to agree to fight him, he got 2 slots on the show, and it went to Lou's because the Garden was booked. That would have been the perfect fight at the Garden, but for some reason the HBO date didn't match up with the dates at the Garden at MSG. So I wound up going to Foxwoods, and that was a classic knockout. That was another one where you say you invested in a fighter's career, because that one really kind of propelled him, where Macklin had fought all these world champions and nobody took him out like Triple G did. He broke his ribs like in the 4th round, broke Matthew, and Matthew's tough as nails, Matthew Macklin, and broke his ribs and stopped him with a body shot. And so that, since then he just kind of like propelled. Then he finally fought Daniel Geale. Then Geale wound up vacating the WBA title because he was forced. He inherited Sturm's mandatory, dropped the WBA title. So then Gennady was the full WBA champion. And then when Geale lost, then he fought Triple G when he didn't have a title anymore. And Geale was another one of those classic knockouts. I mean, Triple G had so many classic knockouts. I strategized the promotion outside the ring. We took him to NASCAR, took him to hockey games, took him to NBA games, flew him to Mexico City. He made a big donation to the earthquake relief fund in Mexico City. They introduced him as a Mexican hero at Azteca Stadium. I remember during the NFL game when the Raiders were playing the Patriots down there. I mean, we just took him all over the world and got him some great sponsorships with the Jordan brand, with Hublot, with Tecate and Chivas. I mean, it was really great. Only guy ever to be sponsored by Bijan, who, I don't know if you're familiar, but with Rodeo Drive, Bijan is considered the highest quality boutique store. So got him that sponsorship. But and then he started selling out arenas. He fought Daniel Geale. He didn't sell out the big arena. That was the first fight at the big arena. He didn't sell that one out. But after that, after the Geale fight, then he fought Rubio over here at StubHub in LA. First fight in Los Angeles. Naturally, I'm from Los Angeles. Abel's from Los Angeles. Triple G was training in Big Bear, so it was kind of like a hometown game. But he had been fighting on the East Coast or fighting in Europe, in Monte Carlo. So it was our very first show here in California. And we shattered the attendance record there at StubHub. So many great fighters fought there, like Andre Ward had fought there, and Arthur Abraham, and remember Rafael Marquez, and so many other great fighters that fought at StubHub. And here's a guy from Kazakhstan fighting Marco Antonio Rubio, who was known but wasn't a champion or anything like that. So, but he was known with the Mexican fans, and it was a 7,200 or 7,000 seat arena there at StubHub, and we we sold that out with about a month to go, and then we added, or 3 weeks ago, we added like another 2,200 seats in the bleachers all the way around. Never been done before in boxing. So we had like over 9,000 people at the StubHub Center. It was crazy. Never seen that before in my life. They've never seen it before either. They took publicity photos because the stadium was so full. They took publicity photos of that fight. And I remember designing the ring walk, and no one's ever walked all the way around the arena. But, you know, it was my suggestion. Triple G went with it because I said, look, Gennady, here's all these fans. We knew it was going to be sold out. Here's all these fans, primarily Mexican fans, coming to see you. And, you know, you got to like acknowledge them. Abel naturally is Mexican. And so we did that. Security was concerned. Like, what if we, you know, we were walking around the ring and it's not protected. Someone could throw something at him. So there was all these concerns, but he did. He walked around the ring all the way around the floor, acknowledged the fans. The fans loved it. It was going crazy. It was such a wild atmosphere there. And, you know, he stopped Rubio in 2 rounds, but nobody complained. Nobody complained because it was such an exciting atmosphere. And Rubio was like in full guard, and Triple G came over the top with a left and just like hit him and just like compressed his neck and
That's the thing about Triple G. He was so likable and entertaining, and the excitement was there, and he's so happy. He looks like a kid going on a ride at like Disneyland. Like,
yep.
you know, he's so happy and approachable, and then he goes in there and he becomes a killer.
He really was one of those guys that something switched like in the locker room. He's the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. But you know, when you could tell, like when he was in the locker room, putting the wraps on, putting the gloves on, hitting the fans, all of a sudden his face just like changed. And he's like, this is serious business. He knew, you know, going in there, it's like it could be a life and death situation. So he just flipped the switch, wanted to win at all costs, and put on a show for the fans. Abel instilled that into him. He's like, look, the fans are paying, they're buying tickets. They're tuning in to HBO. They're buying pay-per-views, whatever the case was. You got to put on a show. There's a lot of boxers that are content with a 10-round decision, 12-round decision. I'm defending my title. I'm going to do everything I can to protect the title. But then the fans start booing, and they're not going to buy tickets. And that's why Triple G was such a big ticket seller, because they knew regardless of what round it's going to be an exciting fight.
Me and my buddies went to every single one of them. I'm from Newark, New Jersey area originally. I moved out to Vegas about 10 years ago. And back in the day when Triple G was actively fighting at the Garden, we went to every single one. It was a thing to do. People that didn't even give a shit about boxing wanted to come on that train with us, go to New York, and watch Triple G do his thing.
Yeah.
And it was great for boxing, just like what you guys are doing at UFC Fight Pass is great for boxing. What did we talk about? Electricity, excitement, entertainment. That's what the UFC Fight Pass does. That's what their product brings. That's what your product's bringing. And that's where the sports world is going in general. Nowadays, we have so much, personalities and so much great things to look forward to. And everyone's got an open mind to who's going to fight who. Hey, if we're entertaining the fans and people are making money and no one's getting hurt, let's have some fun.
Yeah. Well, you brought that around full circle, Johnny, is that, like you said, fans were coming. So many fans came up to me at the Triple G promotions that we were doing, and they were saying, you know what, this is the first boxing show we've been to, because they heard of Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, and the whole thing, and they're like, okay, let's go see him. And he brought so many new fans to the sport of boxing, which was great to see. But that's where I was going full circle, is that Dana White had said the only reason he watches boxing, this was at that time, was to see Triple G, because he brought excitement. And there were times when we had the top 2 pound for pound. This has never been done in the sport either. I mean, the top 2 pound for pound guys on the same show as the main event and the co-feature. And there was like a lot of debate. Is Chocolatito Gonzalez the number 1 guy? Is Triple G the number 1 guy? But for sure, it was like number 1 and number 2. And then I'm really proud that we were able to give Chocolatito a launching pad on HBO, because the success we had with Chocolatito is actually Peter Nelson's suggestion. He's like, why don't you put on this guy Chocolatito? And he's with Mr. Honda. I have a great relationship, a tremendous amount of respect for Mr. Honda from Japan. But that just goes to show you the type of value that we were providing for the fans at the time, having Chocolatito in these great fights against, he fought here at the Forum. Then he fought, he fought Brian Valoria at Madison Square Garden. And then that success, having Chocolatito as the co-feature, I think he was like on 3 Triple G shows as the co-features, and the fans, just like I was saying with Kevin Kelly, the fans loved the co-feature with Chocolatito, and then I was able to talk Peter into like spinning it off because of the success and the legend of Chocolatito. We developed the Superfly series, so that was great, and that's, you know, again, now we're developing fighters on UFC Fight Pass, and I think you'll see UFC Fight Pass is going to become a destination of boxing fans that watch great boxing.
I totally agree with that 1000%. And the thing is, like what you all were doing then has surfaced now big time. And it's obviously a model for a lot of other platforms that are doing it. And it's really quite simple. Find people that are hungry, talented,
That want
respectful,
to fight.
and they want to fight.
Fight.
And they want to entertain. And they're good for the sport. They're ambassadors of the sport. Give it a good look. It's a discipline. And Triple G certainly is that guy. That's why he's so wonderful. He entertains you and he educates you. Hey, you can go in there and earn a living, knock someone out, and be nice afterwards. Nice guy.
You know what? You know what? There's a lot more to that formula. Like I said, he was knocking the guys out in the ring. I was doing the promotion outside the ring, the strategy. But there was a lot more to the legend of Triple G because he was very charismatic. He was very friendly to people, very media friendly. There's a lot of fighters that think, okay, I'm training. I don't want to do interviews. I don't want to make an appearance. And Triple G always would, during fight week, always give interviews. We'd go like to the New York Stock Exchange when he would fight in New York, and always he would let the media up to his training camp. Very media friendly and fan friendly. He would sign autographs. He would take pictures with the fans, and that's what, you know, the young fighters have to learn is you got to respect the fans. That's what Ali told me. I did one of my highlights, or the highlight in my sports career, was doing a 3-day appearance with Muhammad Ali in Germany for the film Ali that was starring Will Smith at the time, and he was jet lagged. Muhammad had Parkinson's naturally. We had sponsor meetings and the whole thing, and then he comes to the hotel like 9 o'clock at night. Lonnie, his wife, who's like, you know, basically was, you know, taking care of him, you know, not only logistically but, you know, as his wife and medically, and Muhammad walks into the hotel. And the German fans knew he was there, and they were like, they had it all cordoned off, both sides of the lobby. And then Muhammad just starts signing autographs, starts signing and signing and signing. And then the security and Lonnie's like, you know what, Muhammad, you're tired. Let's go to the room, because we were all exhausted. And here's Muhammad, most famous person in the world, and he's signing autographs. And I remember the people crying because they're like, oh, I remember watching you when I was like 10 years old or 8 years old. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning in Germany, and I was watching with my father, and you were his idol. And that brings back all these childhood memories. And he saw these emotional people that he knew probably would never see him again in their life. And he's like, no, I'm going to keep signing and keep signing. And, you know, a lot of these young fighters, if the greatest of all time could do that, a lot of these young fighters have to realize you got to take time out for the fans. You got to sign the autographs. You got to sign the pictures, and really give back to the people that are paying your salary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then it inspires kids to go out and learn how a discipline works. You know,
Right.
whether it's mixed martial arts or boxing or whatever, slap competitions. And then we all got to get along. We can duke it out, but we got to get along.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So,
And I got to tell you that Callum has a lot of similarities to Triple G. There's only one Triple G, because after we signed Triple G and nobody knew where Kazakhstan was outside of Borat, then everyone's like, it was like after Triple G was selling out all the arenas, he sold out the O2 arena, he sold out the arena over in Japan against Murata. I mean, all over the world. And everyone's telling me, oh, I got the next, you know, they've signed fighters from Kazakhstan. All these people wanted to sign fighters from Kazakhstan. I got the next Triple G. And I was telling people, there's only one Triple G. And so when people ask me to compare like Callum Walsh and Triple G, I'm like, there's only one Triple G. But Callum has a lot of similar characteristics. He's southpaw, big puncher, but he's got that charisma. Naturally, he can speak English much better than Gennady did at the time. But he's got that same charisma. Social media, very media friendly when he does interviews. And the Boston schedule was crazy, all the promotion we did over there. But he's got a lot of the same characteristics. That's why I'm happy working with Callum, that I really think he's the next star of boxing.
We're all so excited to see him. Great news coming out when we heard about that. And, of course, who he's training with.
Yeah.
Big things to expect coming out of Cali from Callum, huh?
For sure. Yep. Cali in Ireland. He wants to go back in Ireland to fight too, but you know,
Nice.
Madison Garden is on the agenda towards
Ooh,
the end
big time.
of the year.
That's a good time right there. That's a great
So
time.
you're
You know?
gonna have to take one of those trips back to New York to go see him fight at the Garden.
Yes, sir.
And
I will. I'm thinking about taking a trip out to LA. Coming up on the 14th. You guys got that
April
great show.
14th.
Yeah.
So Omar Trinidad, yeah, don't sleep on that one. That's a great matchup and great fights on that show. And that's April 14th. Like I said, the Commerce Casino. We're going back to back at Commerce Casino. Then we're going to go June 9th, and that's when Callum Walsh will be returning on June 9th at Commerce Casino.
And where can we find everything, Tom? All the .coms. Where can we find the scheduling, the fighters, all the news?
On our website is 360promotions.us. My social media is Tom Loeffler 1 at Twitter, at Instagram. I just got my Twitter account back. I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but I was off for like 3 weeks during the whole build up to the Boston fight, and I couldn't get access to my account. I was verified, and
I'm telling you, man. But
too,
since I got you
but,
here for one last moment,
yeah.
curious to know music. What kind of music do you like? Obviously, you love music and entertainment.
Yeah.
It comes through the television, comes through the pores of everything that surrounds 360, especially Hollywood fight series.
Yeah.
What kind of music you like?
You know what? I like all kinds of music, from rap to rock to really any type of jazz. I love jazz music. But my favorite band is the Foo Fighters. I know the guitarist at the Foo Fighters, Chris Shiflett, and I met the band a number of times and seen them in concert, and so they're really at the top on my list. Vladimir would always come into the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Chili Peppers, yep.
Anthony Kiedis lives over here in Malibu, and they would come to his fights, and they're a great act as well. Guns N' Roses is great, but that's really kind of my genre right there. But yeah, it's great to catch up with you, Johnny. It's the first time we've ever done that podcast, but it's good. You're very educated and knowledgeable, and looking forward to see you. Got to come down. Better come down to Vegas, to LA, Commerce Casino, April 14th. That's a Friday night.
You better believe I will be there. I'm going to be driving in right from the studio, cutting drums, plugging myself a little bit out here in Vegas. I'll be doing the music thing on the weekend, but I'll certainly be there.
Oh, nice. Okay. Oh, you play drums? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm a drummer. I'm a teacher out here in Vegas. I've been teaching now for, I'm 45. I've been teaching since I'm 20. So 25 years now teaching drums and guitar.
Nice.
It's a good gig. Nice. I got into boxing through my father. Another story, another time. Fought amateur for a long time. And the drums, I hit them. They don't hit me back.
There you go.
Keeps me fresh.
Yeah, for sure. Gotta appreciate that. And next time I come into Vegas, I'll look you up in Vegas.
Please, Tom, and I'll see you on the 14th, buddy.
Great. Sounds good, Johnny.
Thanks for your time, man. Thank you.